to your table. Obviously, Megan and I have not been traveling, or I should say for obvious reasons, because of COVID-19, Megan and I have not been traveling like we had planned, and we had a lot of trips planned. But we were trying to figure out ways to bring you fun segments and keep the show going, because we love being together and we love coming up with ideas to do fun things. So we took a little bit of Americana and we came up with two fun typical recipes that you can use all summer, which are my All-American potato salad and my All-American coleslaw. What makes it All-American? Probably the ingredients. You know, we Americans tend to like pickles, eggs, mayo, Dijon mustard, a little of my favorite French in there. But it is a typical dish that many of us serve over Father's Day and 4th of July in the summer. So I'm going to concentrate on those recipes, and then Megan will concentrate on some of the amazing trails that we have in Norwell. And in fact, I didn't even know all the info she sent me last night. And it's pretty funny because she sent me this really great write-up, and it was like the size of a pin, so I had to put on like my magnifying glasses, but it was such good info, and I can't wait for you guys to hear about the trails. All right, so let's get cooking. All right, I'm gonna put my recipe, well actually what I'm gonna do, what I always do is I'll show you what I've got going on here. So I will show you that this is my All-American potato salad, and what I did prior to the show is I made the potatoes. Okay, so I took 2 pounds of russet potatoes and I cooked them for about 12 minutes. The thing about it is, here's a tip. Russet potatoes, 2 pounds is roughly about 6 medium potatoes, okay? And but you need to weigh them, because I had 5 that were 2 pounds, believe it or not. And then I peeled them, and I needed another 2 potatoes. So I always weigh things just to make sure, because you want enough to feed, to do the recipe. Okay, so then I quartered them, or actually I cut them into thirds. They were about this size, just so you can see. And that's what size you want your potato. And then you make sure you boil it for about 12 minutes, and you make sure that your fork can go into it nicely. You don't want the mush, because then it will fall apart. I got talking, as I normally do, believe it or not, even to myself, and I let them go a few extra minutes, but that's okay. I caught them in time. And then I put 2 tablespoons of vinegar, and that's a trick. So you stop it, you stop the starch from it congealing together, and you let them cool down for about another 20 minutes before you make your potato salad. So always use 2 tablespoons to 2 pounds of potatoes, and that will stop the starch from getting so it doesn't cling together. Okay, so Megan reminded me, we have our Travel with Abby and Megan mugs, which are so fun, that we got prior to our show last time. All right, so now we have, in this recipe, you're gonna use 2 pounds of russet potatoes, 1 tablespoon kosher salt, that's for the water. You wanna throw that in while they're boiling. And then 2 tablespoons of distilled white vinegar, sherry vinegar, champagne vinegar, I said. You could use any of those. Don't get hung up if you don't have white distilled. I typically use sherry, but that's more because I love that flavor. A cup of, so here we'll go through our ingredients again. A cup of celery diced. It says 1/8 inch. I didn't get too picky about that. Mine's probably a little bit, 1/8 to 1/4. 1/2 cup of a classic dill pickle. That adds a nice balance of flavor and sour. 4 tablespoons of red onions, which is about a 1/4 cup, by the way. 3 tablespoons of minced parsley. This is nice from my garden. You'll see this summer we'll cook a lot from my garden. Minced parsley. Dijon mustard over here. Okay, and what I've done here, and we'll talk about this, which I usually do, is I mise en place out the recipe. Kosher salt, which I always have on hand. Black pepper. I didn't have enough ground. You should always grind your pepper fresh, by the way. I know that's a chef thing, but it really is a good good practice. 1 teaspoon of onion powder and 3 hard-boiled eggs. Here's a trick about the boiled eggs. These made me very happy today, but I had one that had got a little away, but the other 3 are perfect. And when I make deviled eggs, especially at Easter, I hate peeling them. It drives me insane, but here's a trick. When you so the more eggs you have to make sure they're flat and they're not stacked upon each other. So if you have 12 eggs that you want to hard boil, make sure you use a big enough pan. You want them all to lay flat on the bottom of the pan. You don't want them stacked. And you want to have at least a solid inch of water above your eggs. And then for 12 eggs, you'd add 1 teaspoon salt and 1 tablespoon vinegar. For 6 eggs, you'd add a 1/2 teaspoon salt and a 1/2 teaspoon vinegar. Okay, and then you put that in as they start to boil. Don't put it in just at the beginning. Put it in as they start to boil. As soon as they boil, turn them off and put your timer on for 12 minutes. And then after 12 to 15 minutes, take them out and put them in an ice water bath. That is the easiest thing to do. And all you have to do is put a few cubes into a bowl, sink them in the ice water bath, and what you can do is it makes it much easier to peel. Now you see, I got frustrated with this one, that's what happened, but the other 3 are perfect, and they normally the shell peels right off. All right, let's get cooking. I'm sure our producer is like, stop talking. All right, so we're gonna make the dressing. Okay, I'm gonna make it in a clear bowl so you can see what I'm doing, and I'll just adjust my screen a little bit so you can see. We're learning all this new technology. I feel very excited about all the things I'm learning. So I told you about peeling the potatoes. We've already cut them. We've done everything we need to do with the potatoes. So just follow the recipe along like I mentioned. Okay, now we're gonna, in a large bowl, we're gonna gently stir together the potatoes, everything together. But what I do is I will do this. You can do that. You can take your potatoes and put everything in. But what I tend to do is I tend to make the dressing first. So I take the mayo. It's a 1/2 cup. Sometimes I leave it out and I add more, but I always think you don't need more because you have all of these yummy other ingredients. So we have mayo, we have Dijon mustard, and I like to get every last bit. You know, Jacques Pepin in culinary school told me that every time you leave anything in a dish, it's money, which is true when you own a restaurant or your own home. So it absolutely infuriates me when I leave even like a little lick in there. But okay, so that's mayo, mustard. We'll do the onion powder. Okay, I'm gonna do the salt. I'm gonna do the pepper. I'm gonna add a little more because remember I didn't have enough. And I'm gonna do the parsley. All right, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just take my fork and get the rest of that mayo off there. Okay, and I'm just gonna mix that with my fork. Oops, this is the onion powder. And it looks really pretty. It kind of looks like this is also kind of the beginning of a great mixture for deviled eggs. All right, so we've got that. We've got our pickles. Now I'll put in the pickles. So now I'll put in the solid ingredients. It's all done. Celery. Forgot what that was for a second. Celery. Okay, I'm gonna put a little tish more of vinegar, okay? Just a little, like that much. And then my red onion. I think red onion is the most delicious thing in the world. Now, if you wanna take the bite out of red onion, I always tell folks, cut the onion in half and soak it in very cold water for about half an hour, and you'll take that stinging bite out and you won't get the, sometimes people get indigestion. You won't tend to get indigestion. And also, if you take it out and you soak it in like a gorgeous red wine vinegar, you will have a most beautiful beginning to a really nice dressing. So I do that a lot too. All right, so when I'm making this, like I showed you, I didn't just dump it all in because I always think I put half of it on the bottom. It makes it a little easier to mix. Okay, so I put half of my mixture on the bottom of my bowl. Then I'm gonna take my potatoes. You see they come right out. They're not gluey and sticky and gross because I use 2 tablespoons of vinegar. And then here we go with the rest of our mixture. Ooh, it smells so good. I wish it was smell-o-vision. So delicious. I know Megan likes potato salad. Megan and I like to cook a lot. And we try each other's stuff out a lot, and we both like potato salad. She makes a really good one with green beans. Okay, so there we go. All right, now I'm gonna take my spatula. You wanna fold it all together because you just wanna be, I always say you just wanna be careful and respectful of your ingredients. And you can see it just comes together so nicely, and it's just so much easier when you divide the sauce in half and toss. It gets through everything much quicker instead of going down into the bowl. All right, so that looks pretty darn good, but what I love, the piece de resistance, is the eggs. Are the eggs. Okay, so here are my eggs. Here's my knife. Let's see what this looks like. It should be nice. Yep, nice and pretty. You see, the other thing is the cooking time is important, as is the vinegar and the salt, because you don't want the green ring around the yolk. Okay, now they never really stay together, but I put them in because they look pretty. I'm cutting the egg in half and then I'm quartering it. And however it ends up in the bowl, you see the big chunks of egg. So the yolk typically separates from the white. Don't fret. Okay, I can do this a little quicker. We're on TV. Okay. So I mentioned earlier mise en place. Well, it's really important to get all your ingredients together, not just because you're not going to be cooking on TV, but because it's super fun to put recipes together and then be able to talk to your friends or your family. And then you'll know like what you have and what you don't have in case you run out of ingredient. You can run out and get it. And it just is good practice. It makes cooking a lot more fun. Okay, so here we are. We've got our gorgeous, and I put the eggs on top usually, and then I'm just going to put a smidge, oh, here it is, extra pepper, because I remember I didn't have enough, but I love pepper. Okay, and then, well, I miss Megan for this, but I have to taste it, Megan, so I'm gonna just taste it and see what happens. See if it tastes good. Okay. That's a really nice potato salad. You can store it in your refrigerator for 2 to 3 days in an airtight container. Now, what I would do is probably to serve this, I would put a nice bed of greens on a white platter, and then I would put this on top of it and just put a little parsley on top, just to make it pretty, especially for your barbecue. All right, so I'm gonna put this in the back. I'm sure my loyal taste testers will come in and make sure that that's okay. And now we will switch over to the coleslaw. So I love coleslaw because I have been making this because I have been making buffalo chicken sliders, which are really amazing, for some of my clients on Friday night dinners. And the slaw is part of it. Also, slaw goes really great with barbecue ribs. And I know for Father's Day, I'm definitely doing barbecue ribs, short ribs, hamburgers and hot dogs. It's just a great, all kind of American dish. However, there are so many versions. I was reading in the Loveless Cafe book. My daughter's going to University of Tennessee, and Loveless Cafe is in Nashville. It's a famous old Southern restaurant. And they were saying there's something like 75 variations of coleslaw, and everybody fights about them. But this one is really nice. So we use, in my version, I use a head of cabbage, green cabbage, I'm sorry, a half a head of red cabbage. Red cabbage can, a lot of times, a lot stronger, tougher. 2 cups of julienne or carrots. If you don't want to julienne, there's a tool that looks like this. Actually, okay, so this came off, but it looks like this. It's a French tool, and it can julienne your carrots. You just pull it down and it makes matchsticks. But these are pretty easy to do. Or you could put them in a food processor. Okay, so we have a 1/4 cup of Dijon mustard. I can show you this. Sorry if it's okay. A 1/2 cup of mayonnaise. I think I cut my head off there. A 1/4 cup of lemon juice. A teaspoon, how much? This is for the dressing, by the way. A teaspoon of celery seeds, but I was out of celery seeds, so I'm using cumin just because I love cumin. But celery seeds, whatever kind of seed you like that you know, don't go too crazy, but cumin, fennel, celery seed would all work in this recipe. Okay, and then we have 2 tablespoons of sugar. You need that because you need the sour and the sweet. And salt to taste, black pepper to taste, and I forgot, the shredded red onion. So what I do, I thought what I'd do is show you, you don't have to cook this recipe, which is a brilliant thing, especially in summer I know the kitchens get hot. I'm always hot, and even though I have air conditioning, it still gets pretty warm. So this is a nice thing to do, and it's fun to do with the kids too. So I take a big bowl, and I'll show you two ways you can do this. Let me just take my ingredients there. So if you have a mandolin is a great device, okay? It's wonderful for shredding and slicing and all that jazz, but you have to be so careful. So you have to be extra careful that you don't cut your finger. And I say that because I have cut my finger several times. So I want a really fine shred on this, and this is called the guard that you use. I'm not gonna use the guard for a few seconds because I can tell where I am with my cabbage. But if you are a child or you have never used a mandolin, use the guard. You won't believe how quickly you can cut something down and all of a sudden you're at the emergency room because half your finger's cut off. I've done it, so I speak from experience. All right, so here we go, and I'll just give you. So that's kind of what you want it to look like. It's really great when it's super thin like that. If you can see that, kind of super thin. I'll put that in the bowl. The other way to do it, which you won't get it as thin, so I just thought I'd show you. I cut up my cabbage because cabbage is it's tough. It's a good, it holds up to a lot, so sometimes it's kind of hard to cut through. And then if you were just using a knife and you didn't have a mandolin, just go really fine, like spaghetti fine. And you'll see it also looks really nice, super pretty. All right, so that's the green. I'm not gonna do all this, I'll finish the cabbage later, but this is the green. So you see it's like spaghetti. I can show you the difference. I'll come closer to the camera. I don't have my awesome camera crew. So like that, and the one I did on the mandolin is just finer. Okay, but you want it raggedy like that. That's the look you're going for. So I'll do the same with the red. I'll do the knife. Oh, and the red is so pretty. You know, you just want the contrast of color. That's really what you're doing here. And there's a little bit of a different flavor. I made a red slaw. Oh, I think I made that and Megan had it too. And I made a red slaw at some point. I don't even remember the days anymore. With carrots, and I think there were raisins, but it's really like a beautiful red cabbage has a really yummy flavor to it. And you just have to be careful because it can be kind of acidic depending on the dressing. So that's why when you work with cabbage, you always typically want something sweet too. Like sometimes when you roast it, you use olive oil, salt and pepper. Okay, so there's my cabbage. I'm gonna add more later, but this'll work. I'm gonna add my 2 cups of carrots. Okay, and I'm gonna add my onion. And then just mix the onion around. Mix around with your hands. Sometimes if I was making this for you, I'd wear gloves, but since I'm on TV, I'm just gonna do it like that. Okay, and there's nothing to cross-contaminate anything with. All right, so now we're gonna make our dressing. So I have the bowl. We're not putting a ton of ingredients in this dressing, so I think that's a big enough bowl. I'm going to do let me grab a spatula. So we're gonna put mayonnaise in. Oops. I happen to love mayonnaise. We were having this discussion the other day. My daughter doesn't love mayonnaise. She doesn't know that sometimes it's just that extra ingredient that you're looking for in a sauce or a dressing. Okay, so mayo. Then we're gonna add lemon juice. Okay, we're gonna add our 1/4 cup of Dijon. Okay, oh, there. Sometimes it's right in front of me. This is nice to take on a picnic too. So these salads go great. You can make some ham and cheese sandwiches, and Megan's going to be telling you all about these fabulous trails. There's so many. There's so much conservation land and so many nice places to go in and around Norwell and the South Shore. But this packs a pretty nice picnic. And if you take it, just put it in a little ice pack, just so it doesn't get too warm. 2 tablespoons of sugar. And I think it's 1 teaspoon of seeds. There we go. I'm sure that the recipe will be up there, but also you can always email us through our website, which is travelwithabbyandmegan.com. And now we've put on a recipe link to all of our recipes, and then NSTV will also have the recipes, so it will be awesome. You can get them everywhere. Okay, so that is a dressing. I'm just going to put my finger in it. Oh, that is so good, actually. There's a lot of Dijon. Oh, there's a lot of Dijon in there. So that's where I would balance it out. It's a little Dijon-y for me. So I'm actually gonna put a smidge more mayo in it. Only because I know, let me just grab the mayo, excuse me. Back, sorry about that. These are real life things when you're taping. Okay, so mayo, you see I just put about another tablespoon. And that's why I said to leave it out before, but I didn't listen to my own advice. Because Dijon mustards have different strengths depending on who made them and whether there's seeds in them or no seeds in them. So you do want to adjust it before you put it on your cabbage, because if it's way too strong, people won't be able to eat it. Okay, so now we're gonna throw that on our, shall I say we're not gonna throw, we're gonna lovingly pour that over our cabbage. And you will see the reason this feeds 16 people is because when I cut up all that cabbage goes a long way. So you also might need to, pardon me, you also might need to adjust, and if you want to make half the recipe, then just cut everything in half. But often you'll find with the dressing, you can kind of still use the same amount. You just don't want your cabbage swimming in it. So you'll see here, my cabbage and my onions and my carrots are all together. And I will get a fork. Where's my fork? Here's my fork. We'll just make sure that it tastes okay. Oh, I'm gonna add a little smattering of salt, or a pinch of salt, should I say, and then a couple turns of the pepper. And I will just clean that off. You'll see here. And this is another thing. This, what I would do is I would serve this in like a clear bowl, like this kind of bowl, because the flavors are so, the colors of the salad are so lovely. All right, so let's see what this tastes like. Really nice balance of salt, of sour and sweet. Just to note, with the lemon juice and the Dijon, you do want to make sure you balance your sweet. So if you use a strong Dijon, you might need like a teaspoon more of sugar, and that's it. All right, so I hope that you have a lovely 4th of July. I hope you have some really nice picnics with your family. Remember that we always have room at our table for you, and I hope you enjoy the fun trails that Megan has sussed out for you, because they look really amazing.
Thanks so much, Abby. That looks so delicious. I'm wishing I was there with you to have a bite of the coleslaw and the potato salad, because those are some of my favorite summertime dishes, and I love hearing about all the history and the different variations of those dishes. There's so many different ways to do them that you really can't go wrong. Now, as you mentioned, they are a great picnic food, and nowadays when we aren't really traveling quite as far, I've really been enjoying checking out some of Norwell's trails and just seeing what fun and fabulous things we have in our own backyard. So it makes perfect sense to pack a picnic lunch and head out into the great wilds of Norwell. So a couple places that I've kind of discovered in and around Norwell are the Cuffy Hill Conservation Area and the Black Pond Bog, and then also part of the Wildcat Conservation Area, specifically Margaret's Brook. Now, for such a small town, I think Norwell has a lot of open space conservation areas, which is really fun to see, and something that I kind of used to pinpoint and discover these areas was from our good friends at the North and South Rivers Watershed Association. And they have this little handy map, I don't know if you can see it. And what it does is it actually, if you open it up, now it's not just Norwell, but I'm just gonna give you kind of a brief overview, but it sort of pin marks all these different conservation areas, and you can see just briefly sort of the green areas. And those are really so many different places that we can check out. And so that's been something that me and myself and my family have been doing. We've kind of made it our little project to really investigate and learn more about these areas and the history of Norwell. So that's been something fun that, while we are here in our backyard, that we've had a chance to do. So just briefly, the Cuffy Hill Reservation is off of Mount Blue, which is bordered by, you can get there from Lincoln Street here in Norwell. You can also get it from like Summer and Old Open Bucket. And if you are trying to MapQuest it or Google it, you put it in as the Black Pond Swamp, and there is a little parking area on Mount Blue. The Cuffy Hill Reservation area includes the Black Pond Swamp, which is a waking bog. So that's a really cool sort of natural occurring thing here in Norwell. The conservation area is about 350 acres, and it's mostly Norwell conservation land, but part of it is the Nature Conservancy, and that's only really one, I think, of 9 properties in Massachusetts, and one of them is here in Norwell. So that's a really cool and interesting piece. Now the Cuffy Hill Conservation Area is, I think I said 350 acres, and it does include the Black Pond Swamp, which was, it itself was a kettle hole pond, which was caused by melting glaciers. And I have my cheat sheet because there's a lot of good science stuff here that I don't want to forget to mention. And I know a lot of you here in Norwell are familiar with William Captain Bill Vinyl, who Vinyl School is made of, and he was really instrumental in discovering and sort of putting this Quaking Bog Black Pond Swamp on the map. He was a history professor, or not a history professor, he was a science professor associated with UMass for a good portion of his career. And so he was really instrumental in not only discovering, but recognizing this area here in Norwell. And what makes it so special is that white cedar trees and other vegetation grew around this Black Pond Swamp, and then it died and it decayed, creating a very acidic environment in this swamp, and it created a layer of muck. So when this water became so acidic, surrounding plants there was nothing they could really do there, so they couldn't really grow or prosper. And what resulted was a quaking bog. So it created this, it's called sphagnum moss, and one of the only few plants that's capable of growing in these acidic conditions, because it takes water from the air and not actually from, even though it's situated on this pond. And then other plants take root in the moss and the peat, and it creates a thick mat. So around this pond area, there's a sweet little boardwalk, and you can really check out the pond and the swamp, and you can see the moss. And the idea where the quaking bog comes from is if you step on it, it seems as if it's shaking underneath your foot. So it is a really neat science experiment right here in our own backyard. So you might not want to eat your coleslaw and your potato salad right there on the bog, but it's good to have after you've done some exploring and investigating. Have a good, nice snack. Now, as I mentioned before, the Cuffy Hill Conservation Area, or the Black Pond Bog, is part of the Cuffy Hill Conservation Area, and that is a really historical piece of property here in Norwell. It's named for Cuffy Lane, which is a historic cart path. So when you get to the Cuffy Hill portion of it, there's a nice sign, and then you'll notice it looks like a really sort of well-marked or well-defined path that runs along, which has our beautiful New England stone walls. Now it is pretty densely forested. At one point in time, like a lot of the South Shore properties that had been cleared for agricultural use. And the really interesting thing about this area is that in the 1700s, Cuff Grandison and his wife Flora established a farm on this property, and they were among one of the town's first African-American settlers. So really lovely piece of history here in Norwell. And their descendants continued to farm the land for several generations until it fell out of agricultural use and the forest began to regrow, and then it eventually became conservation land. But even throughout this forested property, you have that cart path, and then you have a lot of the stone walls. So you can just imagine really the farming and the agricultural use that took place there over this varied terrain and scenery. Now, as I mentioned, the town of Norwell purchased most of the land in 2013, and it created the largest contiguous area of protected town-operated open space in the town. So, and then the Black Pond Brook flows through the property and eventually joins up with the Second Herring Brook, which flows into the North River. So it's really a great spot there. Now, another spot that I wanted to highlight was, it's actually part of I think an area that a lot of people are really familiar with. Here in Norwell behind the middle school, we have this really great piece of paths and boardwalks that the residents here are able to use, but just as an offshoot off of it in the Wildcat Conservation Area. So it's a part of an area that's bordered by Circuit Street and Pleasant Street. There's this little trail called Margaret's Brook. Now, Margaret's Brook is just something that I think I only recently became aware of, and we've walked and biked those paths for so long. So I don't know if it was just kind of recently resurrected or just really more recently highlighted, or maybe I'm just taking more notice of things here in my own backyard. But it's just a little path that comes off, and it borders the field that is still continuously farmed, and it runs along this brook that also has another name. I think they call it Margaret's Brook, but it's also known as Wildcat Brook. And you'll go along, and then what I also read was that this kind of takes you by this pond that ebbs ebbs and flows, so it's fuller in the rainy season and less full as it starts to dry up over the summer. But it's my understanding it used to be a skating pond here in Norwell, so you can kind of imagine way back when, and all the skaters, because there are some sweet little benches around it, and there's a dam area, and then there's even this really cool stone area that looks like maybe it was like a little warming place where the skaters could stop. So that's another neat place. And then the brook, and then the trail kind of winds along the brook, and it comes out on the edge of that field right there at the corner of Pleasant and Circuit and Forest Street, and you'll notice a little that looks like a stone shelter that's sort of built into the ground, I guess. And at one point, the history of this was also that it had been used for apple orchards, and they used it as cold storage, and cold storage shed. So so there's just kind of some great little pieces of property here in Norwell, and it's really fun to get out there and just be appreciative of all these great conservation areas we have set aside, and really explore and have a chance to really appreciate our own backyard. And as always, there's always room for you at our table. So here's to some adventuring and exploring during these summer months. Hi, Megan. Oh my gosh, Abby, how did you get in?
Well, hello. I'm getting COVID safe, but I thought you'd have to have some of what I made at my house.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yes.
This is amazing. I was just watching your cooking segment and hoping and wishing.
Hello. Hello.
The TV doesn't lie. This is delicious. Next up, the coleslaw.
The coleslaw.
I love coleslaw.
I do too, actually.
It's so good on
lunch.
I know, it's great on sandwiches, it's great by itself. You can't go wrong with coleslaw.
You want cereal? See, I was
Amazing.
staying 6 feet away as well.
You did it again, Abby. There's always room at our table, or on your picnic blanket,
Oh,
or just, wherever you may find yourself. Cheers.